Just want to thank everybody for coming. As you know, this is the Locust Roundtable, so open format discussions and topics in contemporary art, proposed and moderated by members of the art community in Miami and beyond. I'm very pleased to be hosting Cara Despain this evening as an artist. She has been dealing with a topic which we've been evolving, but it's called Phone Dad. So she can explain a little bit more about this, but we're going to lead into an open, moderated, casual conversation, and so please feel free to participate. Also, please feel free to come in tighter to the space because we're all just listening and talking to each other. So feel free to take up the chairs that are closer. And I'll let Cara explain a little bit, and then we'll get into it. So thank you, Cara.
Well, I love Locust projects because they make these zany things possible that are totally subject to failure. And I think it's one of the most important and crucial parts of the Miami art scene, actually. They provide a platform both for discussion and for exhibition that I think really, truly allows for experimentation. And so I love Locust projects, but I'm also telling Amanda stupid ideas all the time for talks. And one night, I don't know what the hell we were probably doing, but I was like, we should have an art talk where we call our dads and just get them to weigh in, so that it's not so esoteric, and so that it breaks it up a little bit, and so that people get a little embarrassed maybe, or maybe their dad's super brilliant and it works out. And so we're doing that for reals today. So part of my thing, my motivation for doing that, and I love talking about art. I'm really invested in art. I write about it. I make it. But I'm also very aware of the way that conversations can kind of depart from what you're actually talking about and become like a kind of convoluted intellectual mess. However much I might love that, I also kind of get tired of it. And some of my favorite conversations that I ever have about art are with people that are slightly outside of it. I do also happen to have great conversations with my parents because they offer this weird insight sometimes where they just straight call bullshit on something. And I think it's important to straight call bullshit on something sometimes. So with the phone dad, I was playing on a lot of things. I guess in pop culture, there's Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, where you have a lifeline and you're stuck on an answer, so you call someone you know. I bet a lot of people call their dads because there's this idea of the wisdom of elders. You grew up with someone, you call dad if you have a flat tire, you call dad if you need advice, you call dad if you get dumped. So I like this familial play that kind of breaks down things and makes it more vulnerable. And also that just brings in a different perspective, because I don't think any of the dads that we're going to try to call tonight are necessarily experts in contemporary art. So whatever, it's kind of an experiment, and it could fail horribly. But I think I would rather fail in that direction than fail in the boring direction. Yes, Meatball.
I wasn't raising my hand.
Oh, all right. So beyond that, we're gonna talk about a few things very informally. So please talk with me, and then we'll get stuck and we'll call our dads. Yeah. So.
First topic,
and go dad. Fuck, I don't have anything to say. Now, something that I was thinking about, that I have been thinking about a lot recently, is belief in art. And I don't mean belief in the sense of spirituality, but I guess I mean, where you take that leap of believing in an artist or believing in their narrative, and also as an artist, how you sell your ideology. Because at the end of the day, and I had this big realization with my last exhibition, I'm not that different than somebody in 19th century America trying to peddle an idea for a religion. It's really not that different. I'm well, this is my story, and I want you to get my set of symbols and codes, and so how can I convince you to do that? Mm-hmm. And I think it's actually a really interesting topic because it's not something that you necessarily think about on the top of your brain. so this kind of like conceptual salesmanship, and I don't mean sales in terms of like market. You know, it'd be easy to get trapped in that conversation, but I think that Miami is plenty fixated on that. So if we can mostly avoid that, I would like to do so. But just in terms of having something like an elevator pitch, or, you know, you do a studio visit and you have this like amount of time where you're just trying to convince somebody of what the hell you're doing, and you're in there polishing things, and you're in there thinking about things and making things, and so what is that? There's been a lot of weird shit that we've gone for with art. You know, Tom Friedman put a curse on a podium and there was nothing sitting on it. You know, to the layperson, they're like, yeah, fucking right. There's nothing sitting on that podium. But, you know, for art world people, they're like, that's brilliant. You know, it's playing on superstition and belief, and it's playing on like, what is an object and all that stuff. So isn't it interesting that even, and I'm a very cynical person, I'm also not a religious person, but I will go out on a limb and like get into these narratives and believe in them. So what is that?
But it was a witch that put the curse on.
It was a witch. It wasn't. You're right. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah.
Where did that happen again?
So he was pulling that in though. He was pulling in that superstition and that whole side pocket of belief.
Right. I saw it in Paris, and I was very excited to go to a show that had a Tom Friedman piece.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I've been duped.
So you felt duped.
I felt a little duped.
Right.
I mean, I respected the piece, but I was also like, I just went to Poli to Tokyo, and now I wasn't that excited after all.
Because you're like, the emperor has no clothes. You're like, this person is self-aware to the degree that they know that they're fooling everyone, or that they're playing with an environment that is so eager to believe in an idea, as opposed to, I mean, I guess it says a lot about the environment by which, you know, like the fact that something hinges so delicately between being really, really brilliant and then being a complete hoax. She thinks so.
Family.
Well, he has the other one where he states that he stared at a piece of paper for 10,000 hours.
Oh, okay, and then the piece of paper is like on display.
It's a white piece of paper.
It's a blank piece of paper?
Yeah.
So do you think he has the belief, or do you think he trying to fool you?
I think that's where the art lies. It's you questioning him.
If there is a belief, there's art. But if there's no belief, is there art?
That's a very good question. Maybe we should write that down on the phone to Dad.
Write that down.
And
If there is a belief.
and today is
Dad's birthday.
Oh, really?
So I can't call him.
Oh.
But if you could,
You can pose this question to someone else's dad.
Yeah, but wait, so the question is, if there is a belief,
then can it be art? Is it art?
is it art?
No, if there's not a belief, is it art?
If there is no belief, is it art? Like, if you don't believe that someone
If the
did
artist
stare at a
doesn't
piece of
believe.
paper for...
Well, you can believe he stared at it, but if he doesn't believe it's art, is it art?
But does it start with an artist? Is it too? Because you
What
can have a lot
about
of
if he believes it's art? Is it art?
Well, first of all,
At least you have a shot at it.
No, but is he an artist? Is he an artist? Does he believe he's an artist?
No,
Is
that's
he
too
an artist?
Duchampian.
No, well, I mean, there are many lunatics out there with
Yeah, right?
ideas. Are they all artists? I mean,
Or Alan Capro. When Alan Capro brushes his teeth, he's an artist, because if he's an artist, everything he does
Designation,
is art.
Although
right?
like Mauricio Catalan continually refuses this title as well too, but like the work is arguably like definitely wants to straddle this. And,
How so?
I feel like I can't think of the exact site, but I mean, several times he's refuted the title artist.
And he also plays with it because he sends people in his place to represent him.
Can anyone describe a Mauricio Catalan piece they've seen recently, or are familiar
Nothing is
with?
done recently.
Or just something that we know about, so that
I
we
saw
can...
him at Freeze, and he's really tall.
He's tall. He's a tall man.
Yeah, he's that tall.
Giant head.
Giant head. Right, outside of...
him, and when you see him, it's like, oh shit, right, really big head.
Right, outside of the Museum of Art and Design in New York, he wore a giant head and was in public. And
I saw the Giant Head in Rockefeller Center.
Oh, you did? Okay.
And it was his likeness, big nose, and then you'd see him in Chelsea, and you'd have this connection of, oh, of course, you're the big head guy.
Didn't he do that piece in the Guggenheim where he had a bunch of things hanging from the ceiling?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
those past pieces went together. That's the piece on Sam's house thing for his alligator.
Well, we have pigeons that never leave the
Okay.
collection.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the Rebel Family Collection.
Yeah,
And
that's
those
the
are
Maurizio. Those are pigeons that are.
The best kind because they don't shit.
Well, actually, he did originally put shit on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yes, yeah, it was. It was
funny.
shit.
Those were also
So-
at the Venice Biennale.
Yeah.
Right.
So he's dealing with whether or not
Those
he
are
believes,
almost
whether or
there.
not we believe it's art, or whether or not.
But that's always the case. No?
Yeah.
Seems to me like the punter's belief in the art has to be stronger than the artist to make it art.
The punter.
Whatever, the person that's being duped or sold to or whatever,
Okay.
Because there's plenty of people, like you said, plenty of people, crazy people walk around saying they're artists. They have a very strong belief in their art, but they don't necessarily become recognized. As soon as people's belief in the thing is stronger than the artist, then now.
I mean, I don't want to take it to an extreme, but Hitler was an artist. you could make a kid, I mean, at one point get a lunatic.
No, actually, there's an interesting essay, I can't remember where they say if Hitler was a successful artist, he wouldn't have had to be Hitler.
And then, of course, Maurizio did Hitler on his knees. As a child, I've been kind of trying to roll the clock back.
The child Hitler.
The child Hitler.
I think the question of audience is interesting though, because, and if I may make this silly, on the airplane I rewatched The Life of Brian, the Monty Python Life of Brian.
What airline were they showing?
British Airways. Can you imagine? And
24-hour trip.
Yes, 24-hour trip. And what was so funny? I mean, I remember the movie from seeing it when I was a kid and stuff. But what I was thinking about now with my adult mind watching it was, here's at the moment when Brian becomes this messiah, or they think that he's this messiah, and he's just this regular kind of pathetic guy. Everybody in the street is preaching, and he just falls from a balcony, and then he's suddenly on this stand, and he's like, "Well, just get your life together and do normal stuff." He doesn't say anything different, anything more important than any of the other crazy bearded guys that are next to him. And there's a whole collection of them. And then I was thinking, but the crowd gets this kind of mob mentality, and they become obsessed with him, and they start picking up his objects and following him around. And they were so ready to believe in something. They were just trying to pick what route to go. And so he was even reluctant. But because he was reluctant, they just wanted it all the more. And I think that there is an interesting question about an audience that is very open and receptive to some kind of belief. And I think that there's different levels of art that tap into different audiences, granted. There are some people that are really ready to see something beautiful, or that they feel really speaks to them in terms of painting or whatever. And it's interesting how that can affect it, and it's interesting how I do think that audiences get a mob mentality in a sense. They just don't realize it. And I think that within the art audience ship, which is now very global and giant and unwieldy, but I think that does exist, and it's interesting. I think that a really clever artist plays off that. A really keen artist has the ability to
Well, that's
question.
where the interesting connection between belief and quality come together, because oftentimes there is this tension where it's this piece is being celebrated, it's in the history books as important, it's in a museum, it's in a private collection, it must be good, it must be important, it must be art at all. So I think that's where the real tension is because it's not only about is this beautiful, or do I even think this is interesting? But is it of quality?
Right. But there are people that are quality obsessed about anything. You know?
Well, sure. But I think that's like when someone, just walks into a space that maybe isn't interested or familiar with contemporary art, and they say, "Oh my God,
there's a guy masturbating under a ramp."
Sure. Like we have a Vito Conchi. We have
there's a man in a room with a wolf. What the fuck?
We have the Tuttle controversy. Richard Tuttle at the Whitney, where it was like pieces of string on the floor, very subtle. And then you have people who call that out and say that's not art. It's terrible. It's bad. I mean, just to like throw that out there as a point.
There's an idea that the art actually exists in the communication of an idea between the artist and the audience.
Right.
And it seems like, at least for art to be effective, that's required. Whether or not that's a requirement for it to be art, but for the art to be effective, it has to be able to communicate something.
You ever wonder about an artist who works for 20 years? No one looks at it. People see his work, but no one looks at his work. And all of a sudden, he becomes acclaimed, and then all of a sudden, is the art better than it was
the whole time he was doing it?
So maybe he was not in a dialogue that was taking place where his work or her work was engaged. I think sometimes someone works in isolation, and it's that moment where that work enters a conversation that is really relevant. Like when a young artist references, I think it's always interesting when younger artists reference an older generation. All of a sudden, I think the biggest spotlight all of a sudden is on that older generation. Like, I mean, I can think of so many examples of that. I mean, even someone like Katie Nolan. Well, Warhol for sure. I mean, endlessly. But even someone like Katie Nolan, she was like doing her thing. It wasn't until so many people
But
started
she always had
referencing
respect
her.
of the quote artist. But there are a lot of people, like Warhol at 82, 83. You wouldn't take
No one
it if they
gave
gave
her
it to
respect.
you. And all of a sudden, if they said that now, they'd lock me up, throw away the key.
No, it's true. It's interesting. Even after he died, I mean, he was out there. He was a scene. He was part of a scene, but he didn't become Warhol until way after his death, where a lot of artists were really referencing. I think there's a lot to be said when other artists reference. And I don't know.
But that
more
doesn't
and
answer
more.
the question.
No, but more and more when you say audience, who is the audience? I think the most powerful audience an artist can have are other artists. Because other artists really understand, and I think to some extent the informed public respects other artists paying attention to an artist. And a lot of that paying attention is when they literally copy. They beg, borrow, copy. And at that moment, a lot of artists get rewritten into history because they become relevant in a moment outside of the moment they even started working. There's so many of those artists, I mean, especially in California, because for so long California was, it was just not, it was where art was being taught. There was art teaching going on. There was institution, lots of smart people teaching, community of artists, but there wasn't that momentum, market momentum. So those artists, it took them a long time. Like John Bolsari, it took him forever to be recognized. And again, it came from all his students who started referencing John Bolsari or started referencing Magic.
So is the art better at that moment?
I think it's better. It goes back to what you said. I think all of a sudden you've got this dialogue. You've got conversation going. It's like, it's not just like, okay, here it is, how good is it, Like, it's like, it's exactly what you said.
That's really important for where we started out, too, the actual objective nature of the art is not necessarily the important part of it. The fact that this paper is identical to another paper that he didn't stare at for 10,000 hours, that's irrelevant because this paper is imbued with a certain kind of meaning based on his claim that he did that, whether or not he did it. And his claim that he did it is sufficient. It doesn't even matter if he could have documented it and he could present that as part of the documentation for the work if he wanted to, but it doesn't actually matter. He can just make a claim it's sufficient. That's like the idea of the witness. It's the same idea. So you can.
It's setting up. It's setting up the structure for belief.
Right.
Well, it's starting to sound like maybe like it's starting to sound, it's going in a direction where the object isn't even required. That maybe the thought is enough, just like the brush is no longer necessary, you can just use a Xerox machine.
Reminds me of performance art in a lot of ways, where like a lot of the time people don't even see the piece, but they live on in like this oral tradition, like this birdie's shoe piece, and there was only like 3 people who were there. And now it's like this huge epic story.
Right, so it becomes a myth in a way.
Yeah.
And maybe the myth is better than whether it actually happened. I mean, a lot of people, conceptual art hinges on an idea. Whether or not the idea actually needs to be fulfilled is...
Is Tina Segal?
Sure.
Art?
Yeah, very good point. Is that so? Have we formulated a question for Dad?
Dad, what is life? What is art?
What is the question?
Well, I don't know. I mean, do we have a question ready for Dad?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Let's ask Dad if he's qualified to have an art question posed to him.
Well, no, the whole point is that he's probably not. I mean, like...
Well, then why do we care what he thinks?
We do care.
It's about, as we addressed in the beginning, we're dealing with just a fresh perspective and not necessarily
Something
an
that's
insular.
not grounded in an academic
Sure.
thinking.
Yeah, or just a fresh perspective, and also there's this idea of wisdom that Cara's interested in.
Are you sure it's not...
General idea wisdom.
Can I say something?
General
Are you
wisdom.
sure it's not dangerous for a group like this? You guys are all like art educated, you have a huge commitment, you're real professionals, and all of a sudden you want to go to Joe Blow. I mean, he may be your father, but like, why are you going to Joe Blow? Is that because really that's like the museum counting how many heads walk through the door. Who cares? I mean, why should we care? I mean, it just
There's something a little bit like unconditional love, where the idea of a dad is someone whose opinion you will respect, even if he doesn't
Do
know
you
anything
really
about it.
respect? Most of your dads said, "Are you crazy?"
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
I wish to speak to my son if that's true.
I'm sure this doesn't hold for everyone, but I think that's the idea of dad that you're trying to present.
Yeah.
Anyway, is that at least for you, your dad is someone whose
Yeah.
opinion seems to be important, whether or not he knows anything about the specific topic, just because he has experience in life.
And in a sense, like, Dad is the Joe Blow that we do care about because he's Dad.
I think we should care because we shouldn't close ourselves to just the art world. We should get opinions from outside also.
It depends
Well, yeah, it's like saying, we're all speaking the same language here, this art world language.
Yeah, we're just making art for artists.
So
nobody
should
else.
we,
Yeah.
compare that? Well, this is our language. We shouldn't get any input from someone who speaks a different language from us. I think that's very close-minded.
Well, art's supposed to extend beyond just like an esoteric group of, 35 people?
Here.
I mean, it's in theory, it's supposed to. I mean, it has a very long legacy of communication, and I would say that there's still some responsibility to that. Even though I would also say that I feel like we've departed from the chain of references where perhaps we started, and the individual lexicon has maybe taken precedence over like a larger.
And when you mean individual lexicon, you mean some artists use a very...
It's not a bad thing. It's just an interesting condition that I've observed. Like I like recently because of the piece I did at the closing for my show
At Emerson Dorsch.
Yes. Thank you for the plug.
That's all.
I've just been thinking a lot about like folk music and sounds and how those things morph over time, but you can still trace where those things are derived. So I can listen to the Strokes, I can listen to the Shins and be like, okay, Crosby, Stills and Nash and this and that and
Those
it
are the-
relates, and then you go back further and you're like, okay, American folk music at this moment here and this part there, it was like communicating a settlement, and it was communicating these different ideas, and then you can see how they shake out into the music that's being made now, and you can still see that. I think that even in like really hip electronic music, you can still find those references.
Then you're no longer a general audience.
You're no longer a general audience,
because
but it's more
if I would
relatable
comment
to
on
it.
music,
Yeah.
it would be a worthless comment. I don't know music. Okay, I know absolutely nothing. I'm tone deaf. Is my vote as valid as your vote?
I think that music tends to be a bit more general and
How
accessible.
about an artist? Someone who never looks at artists and vote valid. It's the best art language has to, and I'm not sure the answer is the best
Right.
art the artist has is the Mona Lisa great because the audience loves it.
Right.
Does the audience even love it?
Right. Well, I think
But
that...
at least you're a reference point, you know. Like if you give your opinion, you have that, and then everybody else who knows how to read that music and all that stuff, you know, you're like some.
If they know how to read that music, if they've gone through the trouble of doing something, maybe it's very valid.
You know,
if they haven't, is it valid?
I think that historically, the public is able to read. I mean, it's easy to read certain art, the great, the great, massive, impressive painting. But I think the public almost always has a problem reading the cutting edge of art. I mean, the cutting edge usually takes you to a place that even an audience like this, that really is inside, has a problem with the vocabulary because it's a new language. I mean, it's a new language. So
There are so many artists that defy that, though. I mean, speaking to your point earlier, Marina Abramovic is a great example of someone who has found a way to communicate something that at one time was very obscure to a very large population, a mass audience, even a pop culture audience, and she's working with Lady Gaga and Jay-Z now. So what does that say about performance art?
Speaking of Jay-Z,
Where's the quote? I meant to start off with
no,
this.
that's a very good point, and yeah. Go.
I sell ice in winter, I sell fire in hell, I am a hustler, baby, I sell water to a well. I mean, that's Jay-Z. I mean, I meant to start off with that because I just think it's like...
say that, read it again.
I sell ice in winter, I sell fire in hell, I am a hustler, baby, I sell water to a well.
He's a poet. Oh, he's a poet.
And a con man. What a great combination.
Right? But I mean, like, and I brought this is funny, John Miller essays, but then I also have Jay-Z Decoded. And I was reading a little bit earlier about how, like, he was talking a lot about, like, breaking down the rhyme and the language and using that to communicate these ideas, and then also, like, dealing with the hustler mentality and dealing with that dimension of life and, like, making it real and bringing it back to something that wasn't just, he called it swagger. But it was beyond that, just to, like, a real basic experience, which I think is, like, pretty much what you're saying or what you were talking about. I don't know. I don't know where to really go from the Jay-Z quote, but
Well, I think that's another person who's evolved from a place that was maybe unrelatable for a lot of people earlier on in his career and has gotten to a certain level of success. It's a great foil to Marina Abramovic, someone who also maybe would have been more obscure with two naked people standing in a hallway and having a pass between them versus sitting in a chair across from someone and staring at them for 5 minutes. It's a little more...
It is amazing how the public so readily accepted that.
Yeah, and attached to it.
Yeah,
Has anyone seen the
because it's pretty weird.
Marina Abramovic pug?
Yes.
Sorry to bring it up, but I think that actually, like the way that she used like Jay-Z and those public figures, I think that actually no one would have done that had they not picked up on that kind of tension.
Sure.
Tendency.
It's a hustle.
It's a hustle also for the museum when you think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, Klaus Wiesenbach understood that kind of sensation, it is a sensation, it's just going to bring him up. I mean, it's like a money play. Now, I'm not saying she's a bad person. She carved out a territory of art that the public can very easily read. It's like a gorgeous painting when it's easy. But it was actually, I think, to some degree, very controversial.
Sure, and there's still that level of
It's at the
tension.
museum because it's like the money play. You know, you want to just bring in an audience, just get some people naked. By the way, this always attracts people more. You know?
But in the 1970s, if you would approach someone and said that Marina Abramovic was going to be a money play, I mean, who would have accepted that?
Well, in what way is she a money play? You mean a money play for the museum?
For the museum.
Yeah, I'm not sure she herself makes that much money. I think she probably.
Do you think she's a money?
I think she's very comfortable.
More than she's paying her performance.
She what?
More than she pays the performance.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but to go.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
But there was still tension in that.
I don't know that she's. I don't know that she had. I don't think she's made. I'm not sure
I
that.
mean, you can see our apartment on hers.
I feel like was it her that recently sold her apartment and like somebody published how much it was sold for? That's where I didn't see it on Curb, but I read it somewhere else. Yeah.
But even so, I mean, it's approachable for let's say a mass audience. But there was still tension. I mean, when we watched the documentary about the piece, there are people in the audience who reject the idea and say, what's next is, you can get a gun and shoot someone. This is a direct quote. You can get a gun and shoot someone in the face, and that'll be considered art. So there is still this violent response to those
Chris
artists.
Bergman did.
Sure.
So is Dick Cheney a performance artist?
Is Dick Cheney a performance artist? That's the question.
Can we ask my dad that?
So we still need to formulate the question.
What's called Dad?
I still need a question.
So is the question?
I have a question for Dad.
Let's hear
All
it.
right, I like this way. I like the question you were going.
Well, we're going
You
to
can ask it, Dick Cheney.
If Dick, let's do it. My dad'll. You'll get an earful. You'll get an earful. All right. How do we do it?
Do we want to ask?
I'll ask him. I mean, I'm gonna ask him. After I ask him the question, we'll back up and talk about.
Why are we asking Dick Cheney if he's a performance artist?
Because who's a performance artist? I mean, Chris Burton shot himself. So what's the diff?
I think you
It's
have
a backwards way of
No, but wait a
asking.
minute. You do have to identify yourself as an artist. Because you can't, somebody from the outside can't say you're an artist.
Right,
doesn't
that's
work.
true.
You can't say, I think you're an artist. You can say, I think you're an artist. But ultimately, unless you stand up and say, I am an artist, then it doesn't work.
And asking your dad if he thinks someone is a performance artist implies that he knows what a performance artist is.
It does.
So
I think he knows that much, but I'm interested.
I guess
we can ask him something different.
I'm just trying to figure out what the question is.
If he's particular, does he think? Wow.
I think
Maybe ask him what performance artist is.
Ask the question, I'm sure more discussion will come.
Okay, so let's just ask him.
I'm gonna try. Test
Should we have some consensus?
Well, I think we should ask him that question, and then I think we should have a follow-up question.
Okay.
We're asking.
I'm pretty positive that my dad is not familiar with Chris Burton.
Okay.
And that's
So he's going to say, why are you asking me this? And we're going to say, because is everybody an artist? Is art...
He knows my dad. He knows what my dad's going to say.
I'm just thinking out loud. Does someone have to believe that they're making art to make art? Is that the question?
Yeah, I think you could probably answer that question here without knowing your dad.
Well, most of the questions that people ask their dad, they can answer themselves.
That's true.
But we call him anyway.
I always call
But
mine.
you want to hear it from him, right?
I always call mine when I have car trouble and I'm stuck on the side.
I almost had to do that this afternoon.
All right, so dial him up.
All right, so what are we asking him?
We're at the stage where I have to talk to God.
Yeah, phone God, right? Do I need to do this or do I need to put it on speaker?
Oh, just that. Just the feedback.
Hello.
Hey, Dad. working out some tech. Hey, so I think the question that we want to ask you is,
Did you know you were going forward?
yeah, what qualifies a person to be an artist? Is it something that they designate themselves, or is it something that's designated for them? And there's an artist in the 70s, right? That piece was in the 70s. Chris Burden, this performance artist, shot himself in the arm, and it was an art piece, and people accepted it as an art piece. So I was wondering if, like Dick Cheney accidentally shooting his friend on a hunting trip, what differentiates those two? What do you think?
Question. Holy cow. The last part of this I understand about the hunting trip.
The last part you didn't understand about the hunting trip?
I didn't understand that part of the question.
So I was just saying, so there's this artist, Chris Burden, he shot himself as a performance piece, and then Dick Cheney accidentally shot his friend on a hunting trip. What gives? What's the difference?
Well, intent is the difference. Intention. I mean, Dick Cheney didn't shoot his friend at the performance piece and never claimed that. Whereas the guy who shot himself, that crazy bastard, considered it a performance piece. I would say, in answer to the first part of your question, that all people have artist abilities if they form that intent. Some of us are better at one kind of production than another. Some people can sketch and draw very well. That's what we've usually thought of as an artist. But people also deal with conceptual art, and like you say, performance piece, and installation art, which is a whole different consideration.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
And so, what do you think it takes to be relevant in the larger picture? I mean, you make prints and you do watercolors. What is it about an artist that kind of catapults them to the larger discussion in culture?
Well, you're dealing with two different sets of values. Art majors and an artist have a whole different perspective of what art consists of than the rest of it. For example, I had a conversation with Sandy once, and she was telling me about, this is something about art, a general statement. And I said, well, after all, art builds a different niche in your life than it does in mine. You're looking to produce something, and I remember what her statement was. Mine has to do with taking things from the past and making them more present now. Which actually is one part of my art when I think about it.
Well, so we've looked at art together, and there's definitely been times where you've called bullshit on it. What do you think is bullshit? And you've called bullshit on my art actually too. So maybe I'm included in that.
Well, I don't guess I was ever quite grumpy enough to call bullshit on your art. Maybe I thought it, but I wasn't.
Don't try to backpedal that.
No, I'm not. I never said this is bullshit, Cara, did I? Well, sometimes you explicated it in a way that I eventually saw. But I still think there needs to be some element of, gosh, what do I want to say? Competence. In other words, you have certain installation art where it looks to me like, well, this was one down at that what was the name of that gallery? Where they had all that installation art at that time. And it looks to me like the guy had just gone to That was his installation. You know the place of the pickle factory?
Yeah. Do you know that
There was another one. However, there was another one that he liked a lot, and so did Kenny. And it looked like somebody had reconstructed a kid's bedroom from in the 50s. And it was, when I thought about it, actually was rather well done. Unlike the art I'm talking about, it helped reconstruct something for people who saw it, especially people who were alive in the 50s and 60s. So I started to see how that was artistic, where the guy who just grabbed everything and threw it on the shelf. I still didn't see that. That's very artistic.
All right. I'm going to let you
So
go.
on the second one, I would have called bullshit. On the first one, I think I had a question mark, and actually, in talking to you about it, and I realized that there was more to it.
Well, because it was relatable. It was relatable to you, and it was recognizable, and it was familiar. I would give you, if I'm gonna give you a homework assignment, even though you're my dad.
Oh, really?
Yes. Damn it.
Okay.
I want you to look up Mike Kelly, and I want you to look up Mike Kelly, and I want you to look up Haim Steinbach, and I will send you those names because I think that that's like a perfect comparison of what you just described. But I'm going to let you go.
Okay.
But thanks for talking to us.
It's okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Adios, everybody.
All right. Bye, Dad.
Bye.
All right. Dad number one.
So he said two things, right? He said intentionality, and he said quality.
Yeah.
What did he say about quality?
Well, the second piece had quality. When separating the installations, one had more quality.
This is not a dad off the shelf.
I don't think
You
it,
know what I mean?
yeah, even quality.
It's not a dad off the shelf.
Yeah.
Technique or whatever, but any
Any kind of quality.
Yeah.
So the pieces, I don't know, I'm not sure about the thrift store piece he's talking about. Actually, yes, I am. But these are both Utah artists. But the one, I mean, I it's funny because Leo and I did a piece which was exactly that, but it happened in Miami, so my dad never saw it. But it was exactly that. It was like our whole point. We went to thrift stores and picked out stuff in a double blind situation
For the collabo show.
For the collabo show. But I think kind of what he was saying too was that like it was recognizable, it was legible to him.
Legible.
And the other one felt beyond his reach.
I think he was also talking about the craft, how much the artist for something, going to buy something.
Right, yes,
He's
yeah.
Or like really investing and building something that's a record that he can appreciate the effort.
Yeah.
What does legibility mean? Like, how we read, if something makes sense to us, if we're picking up the references.
You know, there's a great rift between intentionality and legibility, I would say. The best example I can think of, which is not totally art related, is the Boyhood movie that I saw recently. And I think the intention was to make something that resonated, in a very, it's like, oh, this is our childhood, this is what it's like, and I'm capturing these moments and I'm following these actors. So that was the intention. But then, whether it was legible, whether it hit me or not, it didn't. For me, it didn't hit me. I mean, you saw it with me, so maybe you have a different feeling. But for me, it wasn't. I understood the intention, but I didn't feel hit by it. I didn't feel affected by it.
But it got fabulous reviews by the
I knew it would.
professional critics.
Yeah, I knew it would, but I don't think it. I mean, watch the 7 Up series or watch the Antoine Doinel cycle, which I said,
Did it hit you, Amanda?
I did like it quite a bit. Right. In terms of intentionality, I think it's a different kind of conversation because, I mean, their intention was to make a movie. as opposed to someone's intention being to make art or.
That's something. The contrast is they intended to make a movie. They weren't someone who was just going down the street shooting a video. In that sense, I think that's what your father was saying, being the right age. I mean, he had the intent. He said if the artist, and that's, by the way, what all of us said, various projects, that if the artist intends it to be art, it's art.
Well, what if the artist intends it to be art and
it's bad?
Because
that happens all the time.
Just because you're an artist and just because you say this is art doesn't mean that other people. Okay, no, I don't think it's still art. It's still art, and it's yes, absolutely. And you as the audience can make that judgment. You're allowed to make that judgment, even if it's uninformed.
Right.
Maybe you don't respect the judgment. That's like calling Dad, this dad happens to be very informed, but you're going to call Dad, whose judgment you're not going to. It's not going to weigh as much because he's obviously he's inside of the language part.
Right. Well, it's just a perspective. One thing I do want to say is that if anyone does want to call their dad, you're more than welcome to do that.
Yeah, it's not a closed, confined grouping of dads. I'm just going to throw that out. We are going to call Ruben's dad too here in a minute.
Maybe Ruben's dad is next.
Yeah.
Yeah, I text my dad.
Oh yeah, texting dads is awesome. I don't have that ability.
You should really be texting my mom because my dad is not the best texter, so she's transcribing his text.
That's
awesome. So to the same question.
Are we going to call moms?
Moms is
very sexist.
I'm aware of that. Thank you. I'm aware of that, but I do think it's a different. It's just a different idea. It's a different idea than I have because I think that the personalities are just different.
Yeah, so I text my
Not
dad.
to say one's smarter than the other, by the way.
Via my mom, I asked him. The panel asked what qualifies a person to be an artist, and his very abstract answer was almost anything out of the ordinary. Which, from my dad, who's a craftsman and someone who builds and makes things with his hands, I think just is his way of saying that anyone can be an artist. But then given the example of, and I said an example, there was an artist in the 70s who shot himself in the arm as a performance piece, and it was considered art. Dick Cheney accidentally shot his friend on a hunting trip. What's the difference between those two things? And he said Cheney ... is Republican.
That's the kind of dad answer that we like. That's awesome.
Same to the point.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. If you're a Republican, can you be an artist?
Good question. That's a dad question. Ruben, call your dad.
Is Jeff Flint Republican?
I was just going to ask that.
Did you see? I like on Morning Joe's. It's sometimes interesting. They did this whole thing where Republicans simply eat bacon. And Democrats, you see that? Catch that? Republicans eat bacon. Democrats eat kale. And they did like a whole thing of colored states, and the states, really, the Republican states simply do not eat kale. They're bacon eaters. Maybe they're not artists.
No. Actually, if you eat bacon, you're more likely to be a Republican. You can still be a Democrat. But if you eat kale, you're definitely a Democrat.
That's so funny. Should we ask?
So can you be an artist if you eat bacon? Can you be an artist?
That's one way to ask it.
What was the first question? I like the first question.
Can you be an artist and be a Republican? Straight up. It's not beat around the bush. No pun intended.
What does that question? What does that question mean?
I think it's like an actually like a very pared down, complicated question about like.
What about doing something? What do you think of paintings?
Well, do you think his paintings are good? Do you think his paintings?
Anybody said to talk? Actually,
it's fine. I mean, I personally.
Better than he was as a president, I'll tell you that.
That's true. I'll take him as an artist and not a president. How's that?
I don't know if you could be a Republican and an artist, and you need to ask Rob's mom if you could be a Republican and an artist.
Oh my God. Yeah, well, you can bring that up if it comes up.
Brito.
She's conservative? How is that possible?
So is the question, how is that fair to say conservative people make art? That is not a fair question.
There's a bias in that question.
It's a terrible question.
Look at Brito,
It's a
an
terrible
amazing,
question.
successful artist, Brito, and he's a Republican.
But is he a good artist?
Maybe a test.
I think we should just think about.
Should be
I
asked.
think we should think about this question.
How good an artist can you be if you're a Republican?
I think that might be worse.
I'm officially squashing this
All right, that's
question.
it.
What is the real question that we're asking?
Well, then it gets a little more like bloobity blah. Like,
I have a follow-up answer.
okay.
I said, Dad got a very good laugh from his answer. The panel asked a follow-up question. If you're a Republican, can you be an artist? And his response was, only if you do not plan to sell your art. Deep thoughts.
Yeah.
From a red state.
All right.
Yeah, they're not doing much.
He's a self-declared artist.
And he has so
Go ahead.
There seems to be an element of, so we were talking about legibility, which seems to be the perceived element of communication, and intentionality, which is like the originating end of the communication. But then there are many other things which can fulfill either or both of those elements and may not necessarily be art. And one of the things that I find interesting in art, which maybe is not universal, is that it pushes some kind of boundary, and that it challenges certain accepted notions. And
That's not something conservatives typically do.
Okay. So.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I use that like blunt force trauma because I knew that there's a more complicated question behind.
I was just trying to figure out what that question was. Right. So the
We
question.
can ask it. We can put it to your dad that way. You tell us.
What's I missed that part.
So this part 2 of that question is.
Yeah, your dad is on the
Do
spot.
do artists, are they not artists if they're not pushing a boundary?
I don't even know if it's that. I think that artists work often. The best artists work right at the edge of what we can accept and what we can understand.
Okay.
And conservatives tend to not do that so much. They're often looking, at least in our politics in our country, they're looking to go back to something that's familiar to a very base population.
To accepted rules.
I'm speaking generally.
Accepted
there's
rules
always exceptions.
Rules and how you do something.
Yeah, but I think that in terms of boundary breaking and going out on a limb and doing something totally wild and at the edge, I don't know that would be under the banner of conservative.
I'm not sure there's ever been anyone crazy than Barry Goldwater, and he was, and he was as conservative as you get. I mean, you can be on a lot of edges, and it's a circle. You could be nuts.
I mean, they're like, they want to get rid of government. I mean, in some places they would be revolutionary.
It is. It's true. I mean, their whole calling themselves a Tea Party is kind of crazy in itself.
So what's the question that we can ask?
Can a successful artist stay a Democrat?
How many Democrats does it take to screw in?
Are we trying to ask a question about whether art is political?
Can you be edgy as an artist by saying you're a Republican?
You totally can.
Yeah.
John Curran is a Republican.
John Curran.
John Curran is a Republican.
Right, but
This stuff is pretty racy.
Jeff Koons.
Oh my God! But that doesn't surprise me. That's like the Republican.
Actually, that's really creepy. He's a banker.
I think we're limiting the world of art by just talking about Republican and Democrat.
No, it's true.
I'm neither.
I guess it relates back though to how, I don't know. I mean, there's always that question of okay, let's use a different example maybe to make it make sense. So my uncle was an atomic scientist, and he did very theoretical experiments that few people in the world could do, and also experiments that ultimately were related to the development of the atomic bomb. But he was also a very devout Mormon. So it was interesting because at his funeral, somebody that was one of his colleagues or something like stood up and talked about how like reassured everyone that there wasn't this conflict of interest really, that it was just sort of these separate kind of compartmentalized belief systems. And I'm not saying that that's true necessarily if you're like a super conservative person that makes really like sexy art, like or whatever. But I mean, like maybe it's an interesting question though, because we don't tend to think about that when it comes to art. I don't think, or it's not. It's you kind of think of artists as this like rounded, broad spectrum like personalities,
If you think maybe that talking about art is like talking about God, I mean, it's a little bit metaphysical.
Yeah, belief.
It's like, I guess when God talks to me, I know it. But until he talks to me, I don't know it. And people do sometimes claim that God does talk to them. And art isn't that territory. The truth is that we don't know what great art is until we see it. And it's always changing. I mean, whatever you think. So sometimes it's a burning bush. Sometimes it's... No.
Great art always great.
Is
great art always great? I mean, doesn't it depend on, to a certain extent, on the audience and their ability to deal with?
No, but Don, I'm just saying, I'm making a case that maybe art cannot be defined. That's the whole point.
I think it does. I think it does require a certain extension of belief. I mean, like that's.
Yeah, it's like we don't know because suddenly we believe and we don't really understand.
So maybe the question is believing important?
It's an investment too.
What do you mean?
If you just like came into just only because I know Mormonism.
We're doing this.
You would not understand it. You would be like, no,
What the
doesn't make any sense. Why would? No. But if you came in as an outsider and you looked at, I don't know, what Chris Burton did or something, you'd be like, no.
Yeah.
No, that's not art. If my mom went in and saw that, she'd be like, well, I can't put it on my wall, so that's not art to me. So it's an investment that we have invested ourselves, our time, our education, our thoughts, our everything into learning about what their mind is thinking and the process of art and what it means.
It's actually like faith.
Yeah.
It's a faith. So I
it's
guess
faith in someone else's belief system.
Well,
Any artist that we sign up for and that we're like, of course he peed on a canvas. Yeah. That's his thing. We're believing in that. We're putting faith in it. We're like, fuck that.
No, fuck him. No, but really, I mean, he's a painter.
Yeah.
He did some amazing things where you can transfer the light from dark to dim and that's very inventive.
So maybe
why do we not think of that art? We don't, because
I think that the new title of this talk should be From Dark to Dim. It's true, though.
We don't want art to be defined.
That's like saying one religion is better than another.
Exactly. Because if the art's defined, then we're not searching for anything.
Maybe we could ask.
So why,
There's no absolute or not.
Yeah, that's the only thing that keeps us going. That's the only thing
But I
that...
like what you're saying, because you're saying that it takes an investment of, you have to educate yourself, you have to give yourself over, you have to get kind of almost accept the disbelief, because at first you think this is totally crazy. I mean, this religion is crazy. Because when you look at other people's religions, you know that it's crazy. But you don't look at your own religion, it's crazy.
Right.
Yeah. Right? I mean, if you're Catholic, you're Catholic. But if you look, you look at the Mazda, you think it's all crazy. It's all crazy until it's yours.
It's all crazy until it's yours.
It's art, So we know that Mike Kelly, he may have killed himself, but he wasn't crazy. I mean, he killed himself.
Oh, you're saying he's a
But
great
you
artist.
hear what you want to hear, you believe what you want to believe.
It's true.
So maybe we could ask.
But is art just for us?
Maybe the question is, why is belief important in art?
Because you're dealing with.
Wait.
Maybe that's the question.
For Dad?
Yeah.
Why is what? Okay,
Why is belief important in art?
This is good.
That's the question.
Wow.
This
It's
is
a
good.
good thing my father died, he couldn't answer that question.
Well, how can we narrow it
We gotta
down?
narrow that down.
Contemporary art is like past the boundaries of easily identified aesthetic values, you know. So you have to have a belief in what this is because you can't see it as obviously something beautiful. Yeah.
But you don't. But you first you have to. But this is. I mean, this is beyond religion because at least religion gives you. I mean, do you think art gives you the stepping stones to that belief?
Not unless they've written a manifesto.
It's
Then
less
they
than
set out a set of
religion.
parameters.
There's a lot of faith.
Yeah.
I mean, it is
No,
art,
there's a
you
lot of
know
faith,
why.
but it takes you on a course that leads you to this. Like you're talking about.
got it together more.
They got it together.
They just said, like, they know, they're like, okay, you need a book. If you're going to make a religion, you need a book. You need a path. You need an easy way for people to enter. So they've just gotten it together.
It's so interesting to say. I was
But
with
there are
this-
artists that have gotten together just that month.
There are artists that
There are
have
certain
books.
artists that have their little map that's easy accessible for people, right?
I would say they haven't proselytized or gone out and do missionary work and things like that.
I think artists actually do that. It's just under the guise of a whole different kind of career. I mean, that's like kind of what gave me the idea for the talk, honestly.
That's what a museum show is.
But you're
You
talking
put your
about
work out there, and then you convince people that you're cool,
Right.
and then they buy your works, right? And they buy in.
They buy in. They literally buy in. That's the other tension.
The only reason it's different maybe is that
Buying in.
there's capitalism and art and
So
totally not so much of religion.
No, it's all capitalism.
I don't know if you think most people like.
They pass that basket around.
If these had nice and one
Let's get a question.
I think that's still the question.
What's the question?
It is a bit broad. Could we narrow it slightly?
Yeah, I think we gotta
Can we
narrow
put a
it.
modifier on it?
We could put a modifier on it.
Let's ask, what does your dad do, Ruben? Just so we know going in.
How about the question is when you buy art, are you buying in to believing it?
That's good.
Maybe, yeah. Well, you believe that you're going to be appreciated and you're going to get some value out of your art. Yeah, you're buying in.
Buying in.
The idea.
But some people buy art, but they're not like in it for the resale value.
Right?
Just buy it because they like it.
Well, sure.
Yeah, and there's a lot of collectors in Miami. They buy works and then they so they can enter the club. Yeah, I would say that they're buying.
It's a complicated question. That's a good question.
So what's the question?
When you buy art, are you buying in?
That's a tough one right there. I mean, what's that even mean?
Wait, isn't your dad an accountant?
Question.
Isn't your dad an accountant?
No, my mom.
Okay.
I hope he's in philosophy.
My dad's a lot of things.
What is?
He claims he's had like 600 jobs.
Your father.
Yes.
How old is
Paper route, sculptor.
Going way back.
Yeah, no, all of he used to carry water bottles.
Okay, then
deliver
ask him a
water.
simple
He used
question.
to-
Why? Maybe the simple question is, do you believe in art? And what is that belief?
Okay.
All right.
Is that okay?
That's
Okay.
Yeah.
Distilled.
I mean, it's broad enough.
Yeah.
I mean, you say, do you believe in Jesus Christ? Or don't you? I mean, it's like, you
That's
know.
like he has any believe in dogs and mice.
No,
He said, I don't believe in dogs and
I can't hear here. No.
You'll be able, or
He'll hear me.
yeah.
Leo, can you help with that?
Hey, sound tech.
Hello.
Yes,
How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing okay.
And we have some questions for you.
Okay.
What was it?
Do you believe in art? And what is that belief based on?
Do you believe in art? And what is that belief based on?
Well, I exist, you know. So it's all over the page, so see it everywhere. So whether I believe on it or not, you can.
Did you get that?
Okay. Do you have a follow-up for that?
I believe in what?
He said art is everywhere, so it's there. I believe in it or not, it's there. So
How does he know? How does he know? How does he know?
Recognize it when he sees
Yeah, there we go.
How does he recognize
how do you recognize art when you see it?
Well, some people say they do art, so I watch what they do, and I see what they do. Some people point out art, and I think it depends where you're seeing something art go. And why do people buy art? Art is art, life.
Do you believe there's meaning in art?
Is there a meaning to art? Or is it just like a Catholicism?
Well, there's free art, there's meaningful art, there's different art, a lot of art. So there's art.
It exists.
What makes good art versus bad art, or meaningful art versus non-meaningful art?
Well, it depends on the person. What he thinks is good art, or whatever, or what he thinks is bad art. There's not good art or bad art. It's just art, you know. So whoever judges art.
Do you have to be in like an elitist club where you went to art school and you studied art and all of that in order to determine if it's good or bad art?
It helps.
Alright, so there's no good art, there's no bad art.
You have to be the
Do you have any questions for us?
Like what?
I don't know. we put you on the spot, but you can put us on the spot.
Well, I don't know. I don't really have
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the point.
That was amazing.
Art is everywhere.
Yeah.
Art is everywhere.
Yeah,
The more you
like
know, which means the more sensitive you are, the more informed you are, the more you're going to get out. You're going to recognize it. You're going to have trained senses to see the
Sometimes I
art.
think it's the opposite. Sometimes I think that the more you know about art, the less likely you are to recognize new good art.
I agree 100%.
But also, the more you
People
know about art,
over-informed.
the less you're capable of making really good art. I don't know, I don't make art anymore, and you guys all are brilliant artists. But for me, when I see, like, I work with kids, and when I see them making art, and I'm like, oh my god, this is like Basquiat or something like that. They didn't know that at all. They didn't know it, and it's beautiful, and it's amazing, and they didn't even know it. So I think the older you get, the more you learn about art, the harder it is to make art. It's commendable when somebody's still making art in their 60s or 70s. They're still making brilliant art, but they've lived and they've been among other artists, they've researched it and everything. That is most commendable to me than if you're starting out or if you're young, you're 20s and you're still in art school.
Well, you're not confused. You're not confused yet. Well, here we're all confused as to how to get
Speak for yourself.
Right, but is that just a random, occurrence? I mean, a kid scribbling on a piece of paper, he doesn't really know how to draw. It may be beautiful to you because you're looking at it as if it was some crazy abstract thing, but there's no substance behind that.
Well, no
other than-
intention.
Right, or intention. Exactly. There's just.
You're also looking at it with your training.
Right.
So I took the vet. So with all these years of looking at art, last year I took a sculpture class, the first class ever to do anything. I've never taken a class. I never tried to draw. Like when I draw, I'll make squares. just like square, square, square. So I took an art class. And then as the first assignment, they decided to take everyone to the dump. Because, in the dump, there's a lot of creativity, which they said, oh, isn't that creative? So I go to the dump, and all I can see is Rauschenberg. All I can see is 20th century, all I can see is like artist after art, 20th century. Right.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Chamberlain. I mean, all these people. I was like, and people said, oh, gee, just exactly your experience. So all these my fellow students, they're like, gee whiz. I'm saying, gee whiz, this is like, this is Rauschenberg. Gee whiz, this is Nick gee whiz. I mean, I feel like everything that I could see has already been done. So I was completely stifled.
Right.
And so I thought, so finally the professor says, and I don't consider myself having any talent whatsoever. It's not like I have drawing. I just have, understanding of art history, but not the ability to make things. He says, you got to make something. You just have to make something. I said, I agree. This is why I'm here. But what am I going to make? So there was somebody sitting next to me who was this expert in casting, like plastic casting. I said, great, you know what? I'll cast my face, I'll cast my arms, I'll cast my legs. I mean, I thought, okay, let me just like experience I could do something like that. The point that I'm trying to make is what I discovered is art is an absolute miracle. It's an absolute miracle. It's amazing that anybody ever comes up with something that's like really original, that's really exciting, that really is powerful. And
especially somebody who came from the art world, who has art history knowledge, who has researched art. That is especially hard.
That's who's going to do it, though. It's going to be an informed person. Sure. It's not going to be somebody reinventing the wheel that's been reinvented already 1,000 times. It's going to be this person who knows about art.
You think
but then you also have people who
artists are very informed people, very educated people. They know exactly what they're doing. They work very hard at this. There's no accidents.
It's very deliberate.
Maybe happy accidents, but it's
not accident. Somebody could work at their craft for a long time and not know anything about their art history and make something amazing.
It's very rare, very rare. The truth is that everybody is so. That's an interesting point.
And the public and the press will make you aware.
No, but
that's external.
I couldn't make anything good because I had the information, but I had no talent. There's a big difference here.
But isn't that the point of art education, so that you don't have to spend 100 lifetimes going through the whole process? You can build on what's already been done.
Exactly.
Hey, you made something excellent. Maybe it wasn't a sculpture, but it's a world-class collection.
I'm not there. The collection is one thing. I'm just saying, with all the information that I have, I'm saying, so I took this class, and I took this class not to become an artist. I just took this class because I thought, how could I be doing collecting? I didn't know anything about it.
Some people knowing all of that knowledge of all the art and what people have done is stifling. And for some people, it's inspiring. And they go to make on more things.
Right. I came away thinking that making art is like the biggest miracle ever.
Right.
And then
because for you, your knowledge is probably stifling. Like, there's nothing I could
combination, my knowledge and my lack of talent.
Yeah, you're like, there's nothing I can physically do that would be beyond what I know.
That could be art in itself. Maybe the bad work you made, you could say because I know so much, and they're not going to tell them this is now the next art.
No.
I think
Unfortunately, it wasn't.
I tell you how intimidating that was. It would take. The world. What did they say? The world would have to freeze over. Okay, for me to identify myself as an artist. That's the point.
But if you had the confidence
It humbled me completely. Okay, it completely humbled me. And I understood, not as a collector, but I understood more. I think that anyone who wants to be a collector should be required to make a work of art. I think that's
There are just two things. What did you
sponsor those art classes?
Well,
If any collector wants to take it.
Just say it loud.
Well, but your point, I was trying to sort of like compare with Josh Smith, where he thinks he's not a skilled craftsman and he just enjoys making these things. And to a layperson, they look like the newest ones are like silly sunset paintings with palm trees.
Yeah, but you know what?
Or his name written over and over again.
He would say, I don't have it. There's a difference between someone saying, I don't have a talent, I don't know what I'm doing. But he's not going to say, I am not an artist.
Right. No, he says he is an artist. Right.
So once you say you're an artist, I'm saying there's no way, based on what I learned about art, that I could, for a long time, for the foreseeable future, which is probably forever, call myself an artist. It is a huge line in the sand you have to cross.
But you can be.
You're not talking about like.
But you can be a craftsman.
Skills. She's talking about
Craft
is different.
Yeah, the identity. I mean, like that's like a question.
What's the difference between a craftsman and an artist?
Hey, let's ask Mike Sanfilippo that.
You want to ask the dad?
Let's ask Mike Sanfilippo. This is the dad question.
All right.